The Equifax data breach in 2017 was a catastrophic cybersecurity failure. In 2017, Equifax stood as a giant in the credit reporting industry, trusted with safeguarding the personal and financial data of millions. With social security numbers, birth dates, and credit histories stored in their vast databases, the company held the keys to its customers' identities. However, behind the polished exterior, cracks in its cybersecurity defenses were growing. Unknown to most, a critical vulnerability in their systems was about to become the doorway to disaster. It wasn't an elaborate cyber attack or an unstoppable virus. It was a flaw in a common software framework left unpatched for months. The breach originated from a vulnerability in Apache Struts, a widely used software framework that supported Equifax online dispute portal. In March 2017, Apache issued a patch to fix a security flaw, urging users to update immediately. Despite the warning, Equifax failed to act. By May, cybercriminals discovered the unpatched system and exploited it to gain access to Equifax's servers. What began as a single entry point quickly became a massive security breach. Hackers moved undetected through the network, extracting sensitive data for weeks, with no alarms raised and no intervention in sight. The silent invasion. For 76 days, attackers roamed freely within Equifax's systems. They methodically exfiltrated data, including social security numbers, birth dates, addresses, and even credit card numbers. The hackers operated like ghosts, navigating through Equifax's network with precision, while the company remained oblivious to the breach. Logging systems recorded the activity, but the lack of real-time monitoring meant that no one noticed. This prolonged period of undetected access allowed the attackers to steal data on an unprecedented scale, affecting 147 million Americans and countless others globally. The discovery. On July 29, 2017, Equifax security team finally identified suspicious activity in their systems. The realization hit like a thunderclap. Sensitive data had been compromised on a massive scale. Panic ensued as the company scrambled to assess the damage, but the extent of the breach was staggering. Critical information that could enable identity theft and fraud had been stolen. Instead of immediately notifying the public, Equifax kept the breach under wraps, opting to investigate further. This decision would later draw harsh criticism and ignite public outrage. On September 7, 2017, more than a month after the breach was discovered, Equifax announced the attack. Public response was swift and fierce. Consumers were horrified to learn that their most sensitive data was at risk. The news sent shockwaves through the financial world, shaking confidence in Equifax and other institutions. Worse, reports emerged that 3 top executives sold $1.8 million in stock after the breach was discovered, but before it was disclosed. Accusations of insider trading followed, further damaging Equifax's credibility and fueling the fire of public outrage. The fallout. The breach's consequences were monumental. For millions of Americans, the fear of identity theft became a harsh reality. Fraud alerts, credit freezes, and identity theft protection services became critical tools for those affected. Equifax's reputation, built on trust, was in shambles. Regulators launched investigations and lawsuits piled up. By 2019, Equifax agreed to a settlement of up to $700 million, including $425 million for affected consumers. The fallout was a stark reminder of the devastating cost of cybersecurity negligence and a company's failure to prioritize consumer protection. Systemic failures exposed. As more details surfaced, it became clear that Equifax's cybersecurity practices were deeply flawed. The unpatched vulnerability was a glaring oversight, but it wasn't the only issue. The company lacked proper network segmentation, allowing hackers to move freely once inside. There was also no robust threat detection system in place, leaving the breach undetected for months. These systemic failures highlighted a culture that deprioritized cybersecurity, ultimately leading to one of the most significant breaches in history. Lessons for businesses. The Equifax breach became a textbook example of the importance of cybersecurity. It underscored the need for timely patch management, essential but often neglected practice. It also highlighted the value of proactive threat detection and robust network segmentation to limit the impact of breaches. For organizations, the message was clear. Cybersecurity isn't optional. It's a fundamental part of protecting sensitive data, maintaining consumer trust, and ensuring long-term business viability in an increasingly digital world. The consumer perspective. For the 147 million affected, the breach was more than a news story, it was a personal crisis. Stolen social security numbers, birth dates, and credit card details created the perfect storm for identity theft and fraud. Consumers scrambled to freeze their credit, monitor their accounts, and protect themselves from misuse of their data. The breach served as a harsh reminder of the risks of living in a data-driven world. forcing individuals to be more vigilant about their personal information than ever before. The legacy of the breach. Today, the Equifax breach stands as a sobering lesson in the consequences of cybersecurity negligence. It exposed the fragility of even the most trusted institutions and forced companies to rethink their approach to data protection. Regulatory scrutiny intensified, and organizations began investing more in cybersecurity tools and training. But for many victims, the damage was irreversible. Long after the headlines faded, their stolen data remained a ticking time bomb, a grim reminder of a breach that could have been prevented.